Continuing on with models, then we want our learners to have effective models. And Bandura talks about three key characteristics that make a model effective. One is that that person is viewed as being competent by the learner. So we look up to people who we think, wow, they've got it all together, right? They know what they're doing. Also, by that person being seen as having prestige and power. That's why so often our athletes and movie stars are seen as being models, because of that those characteristics, and also that the model exhibits behavior that's appropriate to the learner's own situation. So the learner can relate to them or they feel that connection there. And so I put a picture of my sophomore English teacher there, who I went back to visit a couple of years ago, and just to thank her and let her know what a positive impact she's had on my life. Because in a world where so many of my high school teachers didn't really seem to care, they were just going through the motions, their classrooms were dull and boring, their classes were boring, Mrs. Hood made it come alive, and she had plants in her room and interesting posters, and she'd allow us to stay after class and just talk to us. She made us chocolates at Christmas. She just, to me, emulated what a teacher who cares about her students is. And it was so refreshing to me. And I remember we'd love to stay in her class every day. And my best friend and I would go visit her at her house. She lived like 15 miles away. But when we started to drive, we'd just go over to her house on Friday nights. Now I can't believe we did that. But she was always welcoming. And in my career learning to be a teacher, I often would think, okay, what would Mrs. Hood have done in that situation? So we want those models. We look up to these people who I saw her as a very competent teacher. To me, she had prestige in the school. I could tell other teachers looked up to her. As my teacher, she had power. And I just remember thinking, even though I wasn't planning on being a teacher at that time, wow, if I were to teach, I'd want to be like Mrs. Hood. So let's talk a little bit about the modeling process. We're saying it's so important, but what has to happen? Well, there are four things. One is the learner has to be paying attention to the model. The second is the learner has to retain what the model is demonstrating. Three, the learner has to have an opportunity to reproduce or to try out what the model has demonstrated. And four, the learner has to have the motivation to want to try it out and to want to learn that skill. And if any one of these four pieces of the puzzle is missing, then the modeling process isn't going to be as effective. Also, a big part of social cognitive theory is self-regulation. And if you remember at the beginning, we talked about how the learner eventually gets to that point where they can self-regulate. And the definition simply is that the learner can set his or her own goals and then engage in behaviors that lead to the accomplishment of those goals. So you don't need somebody telling you, okay, first you need to do this, second you need to do this. We do that at first, the models will do that, but over time, right, the learner will realize, oh, okay, if I want to learn this, how to salsa, how to do the cha-cha, or what, here are the steps that I need to take. Here's my realistic goal. I'm not going to expect to go from not having any rhythm, to being a professional dancer in a week, right? But here are the steps, here are the actions that I'm going to take. Another thing that's so important for a learner to become better at whatever they're learning is the concept of self-efficacy. And that's a fancy word for just believing in yourself, believing that you are capable of reaching the goals. One of the things that we find in struggling students is they lack this. They don't believe that they can do it. And how do we develop this? We develop it based on our previous successes and failures. So if we have students who are constantly failing, why would they believe they can do it? This develops from messages from others. If students are constantly being told you're stupid, ay que burro, we hear parents say, right? You're a donkey. Oh, you're never going to amount to anything. Or your brother got the brains and you didn't. Then why are they going to believe that they're going to be successful? Also, we develop self-efficacy by watching others and seeing how they were successful. So this is really important because if we don't believe in ourselves, then we're not even going to try, right? So it gives us tenacity. If we don't have that belief that we can be successful, we're going to give up easily. The first sign of failure, right? We just shut down. And it helps us set the stage for risk taking and learning. And oftentimes we as teachers don't think about this, but for a student to raise their hand and say, I don't understand, that's taking a risk. For a student to volunteer an answer, for a student to ask a question, for a student to go out from just what you have taught and want to learn more, all of those involve risk taking. And our students won't do that if they don't have self-efficacy. So I always think about, if you think about Winnie the Pooh, Piglet to me is the classic example of a character without self-efficacy. Anytime anything goes wrong, right, he's stressed out and concerned and just doesn't think that they're ever going to be successful, always thinks the sky is falling. That's somebody without self-efficacy. Whereas on the other hand, the children's story, The Little Engine That Could, right? Going up the mountain, pulling all that weight, saying, I think I can, I think I can. That is what self-efficacy is all about. So what are the classroom applications of the social cognitive theory? So if a teacher embraces this theory of learning, it means teachers take on the role of models. So we have to really model what we want students to do and how to do it. For example, if we're telling students it's so important to read every day, and so we're doing silent reading every day, maybe right after lunch, but we as teachers are sitting there grading or we're on our phones during reading time, we're not modeling for students. So in my class, whenever I do sustained silent reading, I do sustained silent reading with my kids. And then afterwards, I might give them a little book talk. And then they're like, Mrs. Beltran, what did you learn? What did you read today? I want to model that for them. I want to model the joy of reading and then talking about it afterwards. Also, to help students develop that self-efficacy, the belief that they can, we need to chunk material and assignments into bite-sized pieces so that students can be successful and we don't overwhelm them. We need to model how to set achievable goals and then help students set those goals. Think about it, have you ever helped your students set goals? We just kind of assume that they know how to do that, but they don't usually. We also have to provide opportunities for students to self-regulate their own behavior. So getting our students to reflect on, was that a good choice that I made? Why or not? Why not? How could I respond differently next time? Excellent. also getting students to reflect on their own work, having them create their own like report card in terms of on a scale of 1 to 5, how much effort did I put into? What did I learn from that? Which strategies that I used worked? What didn't work? So what's my learning style? How am I going to learn best? All of those types of things help them self-regulate, help them set goals, help us be positive models for them. And remember, a lot of times we as teachers are combating negative models that they're seeing. And so a lot of times kids spend the majority of their day with us, more time with us than their parents. So we have got to be those models we want our students to see.